it's really creating a win-win situation. The moment you bring up any partnership opportunity to a leadership team, the first question is, what's the benefit for the customer? In this particular case, we actually had really strong data to show how when a Clio customer is using Scorpion, they're a lot more productive and their earnings are significantly better.
You've got to get your product teams to open up and know that they can trust another company and lay out what they care about and what we care about. As soon as you get over that hurdle, you just start to see magic happen. And we've watched it play out now for the last year, ideating what 3 months from now and 6 months from now and 12 months from now will look like from a product perspective. How do we really deliver to the market for our mutual customers, but also for new customers? And that's really exciting for the partnership.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Harsha Chandra Shekar, Vice President of Business Development at Clio, and Kirby Oscar, Senior Vice President of Partnerships and General Manager at Scorpion. In June 2025, Scorpion, provider of digital marketing and technology solutions for law firms, announced its strategic partnership with Clio. This partnership solves the disconnect between marketing efforts and generative revenue, giving law firms full oversight of the first contact with clients to closing the case. So, a very big warm welcome, Harsha and Kirby.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Rob.
Great to have you both with us today on the show. And before we dive into everything, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law, if you've seen it? Coming to you first, Kirby.
Wow. Well, fortunately, I've watched a lot of the show with my wife, and she's a practicing attorney. So I would probably go with a 2.
A fair 2. And Harsha, how about yourself?
I'd go fair 2.
I would be a little more generous. So I started my career as an attorney in a big law firm, and some of the dynamics within the law firm that they show, some of the mentorship dynamics, as well as the competition between employees and associates and partners, is pretty accurate. So I would probably give it a 5.
5. There we go. A 2 and a 5. Fair, very well justified. And with that, we can move swiftly on to talk all about you and the very exciting partnership. So to kick off, though, can you walk us through your journeys to leadership at Clio and Scorpion, respectively, and some of the pivotal moments that have defined your careers? Maybe Harsha, starting with you and then coming to you, Kirby.
Yeah. So I went to one of India's leading law schools, after which I worked for this firm called Amarchand and Mangal Das, which was India's largest corporate law firm. And during that time, I specialized in mergers and acquisitions and private equity, often working for technology clients in the US, such as Google, as they were investing in South Asia. So as part of that, I got to see firsthand all the work that goes into the transactional law, including a lot of due diligence, a lot of drafting. And that really got me interested in using technology to just get smarter. Back in the day, even though there were a lot of automations and weights and work, which could differentiate an associate who was doing a lot of manual work from an associate that leveraged technology. And I was like, wow, this is just the beginning. I'm sure there's more to it. And after 5 years of being a lawyer, I wisened up. I decided that I wanted to be on the business side of things. So I went to business school at U Chicago, and graduating from business school, I worked with Amazon in a P&L management capacity, building their laptops and computers category. And after doing a lot of interesting partnerships with ecosystem players, again, like the Googles and Apples of the world, I wanted to build more chops in business development. And I went to Expedia, where I was part of a business that created private label e-commerce websites using Expedia's technology and inventory, but would partner with the likes of Amex Travel or AARP, so that, it would look like an AARP Travel Center or Amex Travel, but it was actually powered by Expedia. So having built those businesses for airlines, for membership groups, I was tapped on by Uber to come join them as they were preparing to go public. And I was part of a central business development team where we were centralizing all the deal making that were happening in regions and in parts into a single deal making entity that was actually making sure that we were driving a lot of leverage across regions to get better terms. So the Uber ride was really the most enjoyable ride that I've had in my career, because we saw the highs of an IPO, we saw the lows of COVID, where all the business came to a screeching halt overnight. And after about 3 years at Uber, I had a really good opportunity to join Boston Consulting Group as a partner, where I was helping our clients think about how do they build an effective ecosystem, what kind of partnerships do they do, and how do they really leverage the partner muscle in the build, buy, or partner framework to drive growth. So this was a very intellectually stimulating job, where I got to work with a lot of different clients across technology, media, and telco industries. And after 3 years of being a consulting partner, I did ask myself, do I want to be an advisor for the rest of my life, or do I want to actually be an operator? And I think my true calling was on the operational side. And that's when I decided to join Clio. And in some ways, this was the meeting of a lot of different parts of my career's journey, because I started as a lawyer, so I could really relate to the customer. And because I'd done a lot of business development and deal making, both as a lawyer as well as in P&L ownership capacities, I was very excited about building a net new business development and partnership function within Clio. And when I met the leadership team at Clio, I was really impressed. I already knew Ronnie Gurian, our COO, because I'd worked with him at Uber. And then when I met the rest of the C team, I was like, wow, this is a really amazing team to work with. So that's how I ended up joining Clio about early last year. And at Clio, my main focus is on building the most strategic partnerships that can help Clio accelerate and grow its ecosystem.
I love how you brought it full circle as well, from your experience obviously training as an attorney to obviously now with Clio, with the mission to transform the legal experience for all. And I was going to ask, actually, because we've had Ronnie on the show, we recorded with him live in Nashville in 2023 at ClioCon, when he was obviously newish to Clio at the time, joining from Uber. So I thought you may have crossed paths there. But thank you for such a detailed overview. Kirby, you've sat there very patiently. We'd love to come to you now just to learn a bit more about your journey up to sort of where you are with Scorpion and some of the pivotal moments that have helped define your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of hard to follow that. I mean, it's a really cool journey
pressure.
from Harsha. And it's been really fun to get to know him. And I think business development, kind of deal making, just generally ecosystem development takes really creative people. And so I think that's just been a fun connection between Harsha and I, in thinking about the markets both Scorpion serves, whether it's in legal or in other markets. And then it's just fun to have a network of people that are solving common problems. And there's very few people that understand some of the challenges and the dynamics that are at play. And so it's been a lot of fun, getting to learn and watch how he operates, especially as you just heard, kind of with his background, which it was very like enterprise business development. And I've spent most of my career in kind of the SMB space. So small business segment, specifically in North America. And so, obviously Clio's got the global dynamic and international expansion. And so just been a fun kind of, I'll say thought partner in thinking about BD. But to answer your actual question, I have had a kind of an interesting route to kind of the tech ecosystem building. I graduated from school and actually went and worked for my national fraternity, and was a little bit lost at the end of graduating. I went to school for economics and political science, thought I wanted to go into politics, and had met one of the board of directors for a national fraternity. He said, "Hey, come give us a year, expand the fraternity. You'll get to work with universities across North America. Will be really interesting, and you can network with all of our alumni." And so I very vocal person, very outgoing. And I thought, oh, this could be really cool. I'm just from North Carolina, small town, don't really have a good network. Let me take this opportunity. And so I took that chance, met some really cool alumni, ended up getting a job in a payment processing business, doing kind of new customer acquisition, sales role, quickly expanded to like, wow, it's a lot easier to close these deals if I can figure out an ecosystem around this. Payments is pretty vanilla. Like, how do I add some complexity to this? Like, we're just talking about credit card processing here. And so really dug into what it meant to build an ecosystem to help drive growth for a business. And quickly I ended up leading partnerships for that group. We did about 20 acquisitions, and as soon as we would do the deal, I'd go and figure out how do we build an ecosystem around this. It was really fun, but I never got to operate really within the business. So similar actually to Harsha, it's different when you're consulting and coaching versus being able to actually go execute yourself. And I had a really good mentor at the time tell me, like, you need to roll your sleeves up, spend 10 to 15 years of your career really in the trenches and building yourself. You'll have so much more pride in the work you do if you ever choose to go back to, a 30,000 foot view of the projects. And so, got introduced to a company actually in Atlanta. So the only company I've worked at in my home base. But got introduced to them. They were really early stage vertical SaaS platform and home services, supporting like HVAC, plumbing contractors and their core operations. And they said, hey, we've got about 1,000 customers. We have no integration partners. We kind of work with some industry associations. Come explore, try to build an ecosystem around this. And so I spent 4 years there building that ecosystem, and then met the Scorpion team, was really excited about being in other verticals. So that was obviously core to home services. Scorpion does support that industry, but then we had others. And so I got to marry a little bit of the, all right, let me go and explore these new verticals with something I knew. And so it was really a match made in heaven for me. Loved our leadership team. I met our CRO, Jamie Adams, and man, that's been almost 4 years ago now. And anybody that meets Jamie, he's a fantastic recruiter. First off, he's our sales leader, so he should be, right? Sell you on anything. But he convinced me kind of on this vision of what we can do to support small businesses and local businesses just across the US and North America. And so just got excited about being able to expand the impact. I think there's nothing more valuable for me than tying some intrinsic value to the work we're doing, to the impact it has in communities. And like, there's no better way to do that than through small business. And so it's just a lot of passion behind that work, and then a lot of fun because we've really transformed the way we think about partnerships as a business, the way it impacts our product development, the way it impacts our go-to-market, new market expansion. And so it's just been a really fun ride, and excited for the next phase of that too.
Yeah, and again, equally inspiring and super interesting journey that you shared there. And I love that you talked about mentorship as well. It's something we talk a lot about on the show in terms of the importance of having, I always describe a 360 board of mentors around you that people can give you advice, maybe ahead of you, at the same level as you, even beneath you. And I love that you kind of referenced that and, your journey, and congratulations on everything, obviously, you've achieved as a result of that. So I want to stick with you, if I may, Kirby, just in terms of the core challenges that Clio and Scorpion are solving for today's law firms specifically. And Harsha, if there's anything you'd like to add, feel free.
Yeah, of course. I meant to follow up with you earlier too. You did not answer the question on suits. So I'm curious, what was your ranking?
So I actually give it a 5 as well. So Harsha, you and I, we could say great minds or great scores, but I've given it a 5 from my lens of recruiting for law firms of all sizes for over the last decade. I think it kind of sits at a 5.
At a 5? I can never answer 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 because this is just my opinion, but it feels like a cop-out. You're not leaning one way or the other. So I always go aggressive one way or that. You're never going to get middle of the road from me on those rankings.
I think that's a fair criticism.
It's the easy one. No conflict. I'm going with 5. Yeah, I love it. It leads to my personality, just poking the bear a little bit. No, so we, took a step back as a business probably 2.5 years ago at this point, and we're really trying to think about how we helped our clients be more efficient with their marketing spend. I think you see it every day that it gets more and more expensive to acquire cases, and how do we be really innovative partners to small firms, to bigger firms, in thinking about growth more efficiently. And the only way we could do that was to get closer to their operating systems. And when I say operating, like really it's their operations. And a lot of times it's very manual for us to learn what's working, what's not working. And so started to kind of map out like what needed to be true for us from a technical perspective to make firms more efficient when they think about growth. Like that was kind of our main objective. And started looking at the space, looking at our customers, and thinking about, all right, if we were to make some bets, where should we do that, and what's the impact we think we would have, and go make it happen, right? And so that journey obviously takes a long time, but I think just the main objective from day one for me was, how do I find a place where our customers live day in and day out and make sense of how they're growing in a more concise and efficient way? And that's where this all kind of started from.
And it's been hugely exciting. And I always say action over everything. And like you said, have the idea, but then go out and actually make it happen. You've been super smart in how it's come about. So Harsha, would love for you to maybe build on that and maybe talk more around the Clio and Scorpion partnership specifically, because it made huge waves in and around the legal community. What sparked the idea behind the collaboration, perhaps from a Clio perspective?
Yeah, so because Clio is a vertical SaaS company and focuses on a very specific customer vertical, which is law firms, naturally the expansion motion is around trying to do more things for those customers so that you become the single platform on which the entire firm is operating. So with that thesis in mind, if you look at a customer journey from a lead to payments, it all starts with marketing right on top, right? And a lead could come through any of the various marketing channels. It could be a Facebook ad, it could be just a blog that you've written on your website. And then that lead, lots of those leads come, and then they convert at certain different clips based on where the leads are coming from. And it eventually converts into a matter that starts living in Clio Manage all the way to billing and payments. Now, we saw that we were operating on the intake management space with Clio Grow. We were operating all the way until payments with Clio Manage. But the real top of the funnel was still out there with a lot of like different digital marketing agencies, and it's a very fragmented space. And I thought to myself, what are some of the things we can do to really create value for our customers in that space so that we can go further up and help the lawyers not just stay more efficient, but actually make more money? And that's where the idea of partnering with a digital marketing agency came in. The other thing is I also looked at what's happening in other vertical SaaS companies. So looked at Toast, looked at Service Titan, and of course the Service Titan Scorpion partnership did draw my attention. So these were certain things that got me down this road. And when I looked at the marketing agency world, I saw that you have a lot of smaller marketing agencies and it is very fragmented. And then you have Scorpion, which is not just by far the leader when it comes to market share, but it's also a leader when it comes to really adopting technology to disrupt the way things are happening in that world. And I saw a lot of parallels with Clio, where, yes, law practice management software is a fragmented space, but Clio is a clear leader because I think of Clio almost as the Apple of law practice management software, where you've got a really well-built, well-curated ecosystem and customers love Clio. So I felt like there was a really good match between Clio and Scorpion, and I wanted to pursue it more.
One thing I'll add to that is we started looking at, Harsha and I early days, like started looking at our mutual customers, and there was just like clear delineation for them. I didn't get exposed to this data at the time. I did later on, after we signed the deal. But he's like, we looked at our firms that were working with Scorpion and their performance both in our product and their growth, because they have the billing information, and he's like, there's just a clear differentiation with those firms and the ones that aren't working with you. And so that obviously for me is like third party validation is the best validation you can ever have, especially when it's comes out of the woodworks and you're like, I want those scores. Like our team, as I shared that just anecdote internally, like I want to see that, right? But just really fun to know that we were having an impact at scale. We've got just shy of 600 mutual customers between Scorpion and Clio, and so some just really good stats there. I think the other piece that really excited me about Clio's business is they're really aggressive about their growth in all sorts of different verticals or all sorts of sub verticals, like in legal, right? And so for us, we obviously have always partnered with hyper growth firms that really want powerful website, powerful growth story. They want to spend on advertising, and exposing us a little bit to other areas that maybe they don't have that same archetype, but they still need a partner and they still want to grow in some capacity. Maybe it's just not as aggressive. And how do we support those? And so those are some of the really fun things from this relationship, is it's challenging our business to think about the clients that we serve, how we service them, and then what is the expectations that we set for those clients in regards to growing their firm or maintaining the revenue in their firm. You think about these aren't just recurring revenue kind of stacked businesses. Like they have to have cases coming in every single day to maintain their staff and to keep operating. It's not just about growth. And so we're having to rethink our messaging. And so we saw this as a really good opportunity with Clio, since they service all of those, to expose ourselves to more clients.
Yeah, and it just brings in, doesn't it, a new exciting chapter for the partnership and indeed for the organizations. And yeah, I love the strategic thinking behind this. And I remember when I heard very early on in Harsha, you were talking about it, specific is terrific. And it's so true, isn't it? The more specific you can be, particularly in terms of the way Clio is focused and has been so fixed on the mission to transform the legal experience for all, and just the level of detail you go to in terms of the acquisitions and the moves you've been doing. It's just tremendous to see. So I'd like to stick with you, Harsha, in terms of sort of from a concept to a collaboration, such as obviously this amazing partnership with Scorpion. Outline maybe some of the key phases that took this from that sort of initial conversation to actually a strategic rollout. So I think it's super inspiring for maybe other organizations or businesses looking to take some lessons and learnings from this.
Yeah. So it all started with, an email that I had received from Kirby that was in my inbox even before I joined. So the funny part is that, if you're starting on a certain date, I think they activate your email a little earlier. Yeah. And Kirby had already reached out to people and he had my email ID probably even before I had it. And when I joined, I had that email from Kirby saying, hey, let's connect, right? And in a parallel world, actually in Clio, one of the very interesting and very solid hiring practice is that no matter what level you're joining at, you have to do a case study. So I had prepared a case study around my vision for business development at Clio, and I had presented to our C team in person in the Burnaby offices. And I had partnerships like this in mind, even as I was envisaging what business development at Clio should do. So when I joined Clio, and one of the first emails in my inbox was this email from Kirby, I was like, wow, this is great. So that's when we started engaging in early discovery conversations, where I took stock of, okay, I know what the digital marketing agency world generally looks like, but how does it look for legal and specifically for SMB legal? Right? As I took stock of that, like it was a collaborative exercise where we had an NDA, we were asking questions in both directions. And then the next phase was, okay, it became pretty clear that Scorpion is a very clear leader who would be a good strategic partner. Then there was a validation exercise where we had to create a business case around this partnership. And for that, we actually engaged a third-party platform called Crossbeam, because the interesting challenge is that, yes, we want to see what is the overlap today, which kind of validates that we do have a strong common customer base. And then what are the greenfield areas where we both can expand into? And we want to be able to do that without sharing our customer data. And that's where the third party platform like Crossbeam comes in, where it can give us flags around who are common customers and what is the penetration of Scorpion in each of the segments that Clio markets to. And we did that, and it was very clear that, yeah, we share a strong common ICP, as we call it, ideal customer profile. And we also saw that, this is an area that a lot of customers have expressed a greater need for integration in. So once that happened, we were like, okay, let's break it into two work streams. One would be the product and R&D work stream, where we brought our product leaders together. We all sat in a room, I remember, in Atlanta, and we just worked out, okay, what are the different customer journeys and what are the areas where Scorpion's offering and Clio's offering do overlap? And how do we reconcile that overlap around whose product should we lead in with, whose product should be, up to the customer's choice, and so on. So we started that exercise, as well as identifying what are the unique API endpoints we need to develop in order to create more value for the customer. For example, there's matter stages where, Scorpion brings in a bunch of leads, some of them convert, and how far are they going? How are they progressing? So that Scorpion can better communicate the ROI and inform further decisions around marketing spend. Right? That's just a tiny example, but we sat and worked out all of this in the R&D stream. Separately, we also had a commercial work stream where we dug further into the data around customer overlap, figuring out, okay, what will be the go-to-market motions? Who are the customers that Clio will lead with and bring Scorpion in? Who are the customers where Scorpion is well entrenched, where they can bring Clio in? And what are some of the commercials around it? And we ended up with a pretty solid round, several rounds of negotiations, all the way until we finalized our term sheet and our final definitive agreements. There's a whole journey after that, but I'd love to get Kirby's thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think the coolest part to me on this is we'd done a partnership in the home services space, as he mentioned, with Service Titan. And so I had this, and I put that deal together too, and it kind of ideated on how does this actually work? As I shared earlier, we've really changed the way we think about how we service our customers, and partnerships was a big component. Integrations was a big component of that. And so we had done a lot of work there and had an idea of what it would look like with Clio. But obviously I'm shooting in the dark, thinking about their product, what they care about. And so I think you asked for other people to kind of hear. One of the things that's so important is I play for Team Scorpion. But in BD, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the other business, understand what they care about, what's core to them, what drives their revenue, where they want to grow, how they want to grow, what makes them tick, and then marry your objectives with that. And if you can't do those two things, then it's probably not going to be a great deal long term. You can force those things, and I think people that are really good at this can get those deals done, and then they fall flat on their face. And you see that a lot across all the industries we serve, but there's so many partnerships that get formed, and then you kind of go, oh man, I don't really see where this is going to go. And a lot of that is because you don't do all this kind of due diligence. And so we spent so much time on the product side. And I think what's really unique about Scorpion, and I get so excited to talk about, is we're really unique in the marketing space. We have, you mentioned kind of the Apple comment, but we have proprietary software, and we at times even get beat up for this in the market because we're not building websites on WordPress. We have our own website product, but there's really clear benefits And it takes you kind of diving into our business to realize that we can't do work like this if we had not made the decision to build that years ago. And because we've got this underlying technology as a business at Scorpion, it's really empowered us to go and do partnerships like this. I couldn't have gone and had those conversations if we didn't have a platform to integrate, right? And so the marrying of our website product with our we have lead intake tools, not like matter intake tools like Clio Grow. We just want your website to convert really well. And so when we focus in our lane and we really did that product mapping exercise, it became very clear. I'll never forget walking out of the room. We had several people from the Scorpion team and the Clio team there, and all of us were like, "This is really clear. Like, what we care about is driving, net customer acquisition or net client acquisition. What you all care about is how is that converting to a case, and how is it being managed after that, how it's being billed, etc., and all the operating procedures in between, research, etc." And so I think doing that diligence is so important, but also just for anybody that wants to do partnerships or pursuing partnerships is like to really think about what that other business is doing and how you can actually impact them and go prove it first. Like, you don't get to have conversations like this if you don't have substantial mutual customers where you're proving it day in and day out. It's just kind of all talk. And so you do get hit up a lot around, "Oh, we should go and do this and we're going to change everything." And you're like, "That's great. Can you share one common customer or two common customers and the workflows that they're experiencing?" And usually you get a response of like, "Well, I haven't found that yet, but I know if we work together, it will be great." So, I think for us, just, it was a really exciting kind of workflow there. That was the moment that I walked away from going, all right, this is going to happen. There's a lot of stuff to figure out. That's going to take us. I mean, that meeting was 11 months ago, give or take. It was in the fall of last year, so into summer of last year, and getting all of the kind of product and R&D in row and excited about it and understanding their part in this, opening up. I think that's another piece that's really challenging. You got Harsha and I like championing something, but you've got to get your product teams to open up and know that they can trust another company and kind of lay out what they care about and what we care about. And so as soon as you get over that hurdle, you just start to see magic happen. And we've watched it play out now for the last year and kind of ideating what 3 months from now and 6 months from now and 12 months from now will look like from a product perspective. But that's probably the thing that gets me most excited, because it's not the impact we can have today. It's how do we iterate and how do we really deliver to the market for our mutual customers, but also for new customers. And that's really exciting for, I think, the partnership on a go-forward basis.
Are you a solicitor still stuck in the office while everyone else is on a sun lounger? Clio, yes, the legal software loved by over 150,000 legal professionals, wants to help you switch off this summer. With Clio, you can manage cases, clients, billing, and even client onboarding all in one place from any device. That means less faffing around with paper files and more time for ice creams, staycations, and just putting your feet up. And here's the best part. Sign up by the 31st of August 2025 and you'll get 25% off your first year of Clio. Visit clio.com/UK to book a demo and claim your offer. Terms and conditions apply. Now back to the show. It's exciting hearing the journey and just the level of due diligence and strategic thinking and mapping and rationale. And you talked there about as well, the mutual customers, and Clio has always been client centric. It's something I've admired about the organization from the early days of partnering them. And I love Jack's book as well about the client centered law firm. I think it's fantastic. But you want fusion, don't you, rather than confusion? And obviously with this partnership, there is clear synergies and it's offering tons of value. And it leads to my next question for you, Harsha, which I can't believe we're already sort of half an hour into a show and haven't mentioned the words AI. But we of course we have to, because with tech, obviously there's a lot of growth opportunities. So when you actually pair Scorpion's AI powered marketing with Clio's obviously legal operating system, what becomes possible for the more growth minded law firms that wasn't necessarily there before?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the way to think about it is, historically, marketing has operated kind of in its silo, and practice management has operated in its silo. And there's a lot of manual work involved in syncing data from all your leads and marketing to practice management if you don't use an integration, right? So this advanced integration actually takes out a lot of manual work, but more importantly, it also unlocks a lot of the data that's sitting within a customer's Clio Manage that can actually tie back into their marketing software and help drive significantly better decisions. Because today what happens is you have your marketing spend and you kind of make rational assumptions and guesswork around the business that each lead is driving, and therefore try to come up with better marketing decisions. But you're still operating off assumptions. Whereas in this new world with this integration, you're actually tracking things a lot more granularly. The two systems are talking to each other, which means it's taking out the entire guesswork from trying to figure out, okay, which part of my marketing is working, which one's not, right? There's that. The second piece is, in the world of AI, data is the fuel. And because Clio Manage has all this timekeeping, billing, and payments data around each matter, now you can actually score your leads in a much more effective way just by knowing that a similar looking lead with similar attributes has netted you X million dollars in payments. And that's really where the magic happens, because Scorpion has that proprietary AI for scoring leads, and Clio has all this data around not just existing cases, but past cases as well that a law firm has done. And pairing the two is really supercharging the power of the AI.
Well, I want to stick with you, Kirby, on the AI with purpose, particularly because, you can get flooded with leads and a lot of them can be pretty useless a lot of the time within organizations. So with the sort of AI that you've got at Scorpion, how are you ensuring then, building on that law firms are going to be attracting far better leads, not just getting a higher volume?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing there is understanding what's happening post that initial conversation, or post that initial form fill, or post the initial engagement with the firm. And so I think what we usually run blind to, and historically, you would have a marketing manager here at Scorpion, and they're having their, weekly call with a firm. They're talking about how many leads they've received. That firm says, but they're all crap. We have to go back and manually try to figure out what that even means. And then a lot of times we'll find that, hey, there were some really quality cases in there, but your intake process was terrible. Or, hey, there's a lot of quality cases in here, but they're in different practice areas. We should probably adjust your campaigns so that you're not getting these leads anymore. Those conversations, though, play out over weeks. There's manual research that would go into there. And then you have this delay, which ends up with marketing waste, right? And so we're both taking out the time that's required for us to analyze campaign performance, marry it back to matter outcomes, while in tandem making our system smarter. And so as we pull this back, and right now this is where we're spending a lot of our time as it relates to our common customers, is pulling back as much of the information as we can to build logic and build a strong understanding of, this is a perfect case type and we want to go get 100 more of these, and this is the average cost, and this is what your spend should be, and here's the revenue that you'll see from this. So I think that flywheel is really, really critical. And what you're seeing, and really the whole premise of the relationship, is we got to create that flywheel. The only way to do it was to marry a marketing platform with an operating system, practice management. There's no organization to do that within Clio. And I think that really changes the game, because what's going to happen, as I shared earlier, we're going to learn over the next month, 3 months, 6 months, and you're going to be able to see really powerful use cases of, wow, like we eliminated 30% of waste and ad spend because we made campaigns more efficient. Now let's It doesn't mean that the firm's going to spend 30% less. It means that we're going to help them grow 30% more, right? And that we can actually use more working dollars. And so I think that's what gets me really excited about how AI is layered into our systems is, we have experts here. They've been doing it for a really long time and supporting their clients. They've been doing it manually. And when I have conversations like this with them, I know they're like besides themselves on, oh man, I'm actually going to be able to do marketing strategy and not data analysis. It's just a really fantastic conversation to have with our team. But we can't do it without kind of marrying those product teams together and then, being able to pass it back. I think something unique to Scorpion is we have our own ad product. So we're managing your budget directly in one ad platform. So it gives us the ability to iterate and manage campaigns at scale and pass data back and make tweaks at scale. And you just can't do that. And then if you go out and look around the market, like you can't do those things. And so I just think that that's really exciting for us, and we're only going to get better and learn with the information that we're getting. And then we want to superpower all the growth that we can for our clients and that want to do that.
Yeah, and honestly, making your marketing more efficient really has a lot of downstream effects and benefits for all parties involved. Of course, the law firm now can keep the same marketing spend and drive 30% more revenue, for example. And for us, that also means that we need to help that law firm become more productive through use of our AI assistants like Clio Duo, through use of smart AI tools like Clio Draft, so that now the law firm with the same size can still do 30% more work. And it also drives more payments, which definitely does help Clio as well. So it's really creating a win-win situation. And the one thing that doesn't come out that much that I want to talk about is also that it's not just Clio, Scorpion, and the law firms that are winners here. It's also a lot of the other digital marketing agencies, because essentially what we're doing today is we collaborate really deeply to create the best-in-class experience, which means that we are improving Clio Grow's APIs, we are building net new endpoints, and we are testing it out and piloting with Scorpion. But a lot of those will then be out there once developed for other digital marketing agencies to use. So it's really transforming the experience for all the DMEs, right? So I think that's a bigger cause that we're working towards as well.
And that just fits so nicely, doesn't it, into Clio's overarching mission with regards to transforming the legal experience for all. And I always say collaboration is domination. And I've admired the way Clio has absolutely gone about that in terms of collaborating and, building the ecosystem, which we'll talk about in a little bit later on. One thing I want to touch on, and Kirby, you're touching on it as well, as revenue. And we've been kind of flirting with it, but I want to get a little bit into the deeper parts of it. The ROI, does it speak for itself? I talk a lot about actually the COI. I think that's really important that organizations get stuck with, which is the cost of inaction, actually over focusing directly straightly on the ROI. But in terms of some of the early stages or success stories or statistics following the partnership, is there anything you can share with us that might be inspirational for some of our listeners? Kirby, anything you would like to share?
Yeah, I think, we've gotten feedback from a lot of the early adopters of the integration that they're just really excited that they can see what's working and what's not. And they're no longer talking to us about lead quality. They're talking to us about their revenue targets. And that is just a fantastic conversation for everybody involved. I'll quote some of them, like, we can be more strategic. We can focus on our company's culture. We can focus on being lawyers again. Like, we've had some really, really good anecdotes come out of kind of the early adopters of the integration. I think the other piece is, we're starting to, and we talked about earlier, we'll have to do a follow-up at ClioCon, but we're starting to pull back, the efficiency. So that's an ROI conversation, and happy to share more of that as we have more aggregate data to share. But it's been really exciting just to watch our clients' response to being able to see that in their products, in the reporting, and then change the conversation from a CPL conversation to truly like, what is my return on my advertising spend? What's my return on my marketing spend? And be able to have educated conversations with them. A lot of times we're proving them wrong too in certain ways, or we're learning and we can make decisions faster and we can figure out what's not working. And I think that's like what's fun is like we're all human and there's so much pointing fingers as Harsha mentioned, like it's a very fragmented space. And there's so much like black box and conversations that happen and we're just throwing money out the window, and we're kind of removing that entire dialogue because you can go and look exactly where this came from. We attribute all of them and we can show you all the way into, when that client was signed, when that client engaged with you for the first time, all the way to when they're transacting with you, even if that takes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or, a week. And I think that's really powerful for clients. And that's the feedback we're getting thus far.
Yeah, and if you're getting similar feedback, in fact, if I were to think of the feedback that we've received, it's broadly in two themes. The first one is strategic, where they are like, hey, we always had a hunch around, what channel was netting out, what ROI, but now we don't have to guess. We really can make those bold decisions knowing that our hypothesis was right in the first place. The second one is more operational, where a lot of firms have said, hey, this would have been a nightmare for us to inject all the lead data into our law practice management system without this integration. And in the past, that's what they were doing. And with an integration, it's a lot more streamlined and it takes out hours and hours of an intake specialist's work. So the other two broad themes, but overall, it's been extremely positive. And we've had a lot of customers actually coming in saying, hey, you know what, we want to get Clio Grow because Clio Grow and Scorpion are so well integrated.
And it's talking to when we've had from Piers Linney from Shark Tank, Dragons Den over here in the UK come on the show. He talked very openly about a value pyramid, if you can imagine that, in terms of technology is coming in and it's filling up the pyramid. And you as the human service provider, it can enable you then to do, like you're talking to before, Kirby, to be the lawyer again, to do that strategic thinking, to do the work that you perhaps enjoy doing and free up the time and all of the mundane roles that are happening. I think it's also providing real-time, high-quality data to make better informed decisions to enable you to be more client-centric and do great quality work. I love it. Okay, Harsha, sticking on this sort of streamlined conversion then, sort of from an interest to actually instruction, because law firms, there is the lifeblood. They need to ensure that they're retaining work, getting new work in. So how are you removing a lot of that friction between the lead generation and the client onboarding specifically, and what's changing in how law firms actually close new business from what you may have seen a few years ago?
Yeah, so what's changing is really that we are doubling down on the integration between Clio Grow, which is the intake management solution, and Scorpion. And to set the context here, if you remember the Legal Trends report, I think it said that most law firms don't respond to 67% of the calls that they received, right? So there is a fundamental break point between your marketing and lead generation to the lead intake, and really like tying Scorpion and Clio Grow through a deeper API integration is going to make sure that we have a lot more robust lead capture process and a much better reporting between the two buckets. The other thing that's changing is we are working together to see what additional Clio Grow API endpoints do we create. For example, I spoke about matter stages. Similarly, can we predict the value of a matter and therefore the value of a lead? How do we use AI on the data to better, serve the prospective value of a certain lead? So those are some of the things that, we're really working together on. And some of that is even work in progress. As we speak, our development teams are building out those APIs. But as we deploy them, I think that's really going to change the way the law firms are making those decisions.
Yeah.
Kirby, what would you add here?
Yeah, I just like being able to have a conversation with a managing partner and say, hey, you've got 150 matters that are coming into your firm on a monthly basis. This is how many are flowing through these channels. This is how many phone calls it takes to close this. And by close, I mean, move them into the managed process, moving from Clio Grow to Clio Manage, and be able to have a really foundational discussion that's data driven, no emotion, around how their firm is structured, how many people they have doing intake, should they hire somebody to do intake for the first time, where is the leakage in that, how bad is their after hour call center or what have you, and being able to truly point with real data to what's working and what's not. And so I think what's really transforming is, we've had for years, you could do a lead push from, an online form into an intake solution. And that was like baseline, that's great. No more duplicate entry. Like, we solved that problem. But now there's so many other steps that happen post that need to be accounted for, need to be part of a thought process and operationalizing an effective firm, and to also get more efficient with your spend. Is that a case that you can take? Is it in the right practice area? Is this a referral that should be transitioned to another firm? And then how long do each of these steps take so that you can build a business? And so we think of this at Scorpion around, like, we want people to be able to think about their firm like a business. We want them to have the same conversations we have around how we grow. And I can guarantee you, we never have conversations without any data to back them up. At Scorpion, we know how many leads it takes to close a deal. We know how many we need on a monthly basis. We have capacity that we think about, and that's what structures our entire business. That's only fair that we can provide a small business with 5, 6, 7, 8 employees relatively similar insights. And I think what you'll see over the next year and 2 years and 3 years is much more maniacal focus on like operational excellence. There's a lot of coaching groups that have popped up that are talking about these things. And what's interesting for me is obviously strong background on the home services side. And you've seen this. It is a machine nowadays between their operating platform, their marketing, their coaching, their manufacturers, their distributor networks. And they all have these really defined metrics on how every role in the business operates. And I think we're really close to that in the legal market. And that gets me really excited because I just want people to, again, they can focus on what they do best, but they can also know how to scale their practice if they want to.
I like that you really drill down on the data point of view. And look, facts are important as a lawyer as well. You need to have the right facts to make the informed decision. And, I just love the strategic mindset of everything that's involved with this partnership and the way it's going. And there's just real exciting energy behind it all. Harsha, I want to talk about the Clio sort of broader evolving ecosystem, because it's been a hell of a year. You've come out of the blocks post Series F with obviously the ShareDo acquisition, with VLEX, with Scorpion, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more exciting things down the track. But what does this partnership signal specifically for the broader Clio vision, and how does it reshape perhaps what users can expect from your ecosystem moving forwards?
That's a great question. And yes, like, Clio's had an amazing year, right? We started with the Series F about a year ago, then the ShareDo acquisition that really helps us win in the enterprise space. And now with VLEX, we are actually in the practice of law as opposed to being in the business of law. And this Scorpion partnership is actually a really big milestone for us because it's signaling to the ecosystem that, hey, Clio has a very strong build, buy, or partner muscle. It's no longer that, hey, we're just going to build everything or buy everything. But there are going to be areas where it is the strategic move to actually partner deeply. And that's the piece that this tells us. And there are going to be other areas as well where we are looking to make some really deep partnerships. And that doesn't mean that we are moving away from our stance of still being a very open ecosystem with a lot of integrations. I think that's a very key part of what Clio is because Clio is the most developer-friendly law practice management platform that's out there. We have 300 plus app integrations. But there is always space for some really deep strategic partnerships where you're actually getting the two R&D teams to sit together and co-create solutions. You're getting the two go-to-market teams to sit together and figure out, okay, how do you go to market and what customer problem do you solve just through your deep collaboration?
I love all of those insights. And, again, collaboration is something we're super passionate about here on the Legally Speaking podcast. Kirby, you teased a little bit about sort of some maybe deeper insights or some new tools. Is there anything you can lift the curtain on slightly in terms of things that might be coming down the track? And what are you building that maybe might surprise the legal market?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece that you'll see is just around like true pipeline, like full funnel management. And as Harsha said earlier, like where we live is above where they're living in that client journey. And what Scorpions like built our entire business on is just being fantastic at getting consumers to services in their time of need. Like that's what we think about every single day. Every single market, they have consumers that need a service in that moment, and usually it's pretty critical. How do we get them there effectively with the best customer experience? And so I think from us, it's how do we get those consumers' problems solved faster if you're a Scorpion client than if you're not. And that part is, I think, a really fantastic like lead into this full funnel visibility of where do these clients exist in that pipeline? Where are you dropping the ball as a firm, and being able to be strategic partners with our clients in solving those problems day in and day out with visibility in real time. And I think you'll start to see roles in businesses that in firms that are much more correlated to like operations than you see today. I think today it's usually an office manager that's mostly thinking about like hiring an HR in the office. And then I think you're going to see those roles evolve to be kind of experts. You see like the Salesforce administrators in businesses, but I think you'll really start to see roles be created in firms that are thinking about how do I leverage these insights and make the right decisions to effectively grow our practice or be more efficient or lower our cost to serve, and so on and so forth. And I think you'll see that across the legal market, especially with the introduction of like VLEX and tools and marrying things like that with, Clio Duo. And like, if you look at the Clio product stack today, there's clear evolution to helping attorneys operate faster. And so I just think that marrying those two things together is what you'll see. And we don't even know what else we could do together yet. I think that'll continue to evolve.
And I guess that's what's very exciting about the partnership. And again, the focus on sort of data and, insights driven decisions. Because I remember very early on when a mentor said to me, when emotions go up, sometimes intelligent decisions can go down. So the fact that you could be so focused on utilizing data and utilizing these insights to make strategic, highly credible and valuable decisions to ultimately be better services for your clients, which has been the good nucleus of this discussion. Harsha, anything you would add to that before we look to close, or any sort of final points you would like to add regarding the partnership?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this partnership, and so are our customers. And that's because this is creating very tangible value for them. And I'll tell you this, like the moment you bring up any partnership opportunity to a leadership team, the first question that comes up is, what's the benefit for the customer? And in this particular case, we actually had really strong data to show how when a Clio customer is using Scorpion, they're a lot more productive and their earnings are significantly better than an average Clio customer that is not using Scorpion. And I'm very excited that, we are unlocking this functionality to help our customers make more money. And historically, Clio's been this great platform that made law firms a lot more efficient. But now Clio's becoming this platform that's not just making them efficient, but also making them a lot more money because A, we have partnerships like Scorpion, and B, we have tools like Vincent and VLX that's coming on our platform pretty soon, which will actually help them do their core work in a much more effective and efficient manner, leveraging AI. And that's really changing the way customers are going to perceive Clio.
And it's not just about satisfying clients with Clio. And what I've admired watching the journey, it's about delighting. And everything you said there is going to be delighting, isn't it? Clio existing clients and future clients in terms of, all the amazing tools and efficiencies that you're going to bring. This has been a wealth of information and really rich discussion. I've enjoyed learning more about the whole deep thought process, the time and just the effort and everything that's been involved in terms of making this wonderful partnership happen. If people would like to know more, coming to you, Kirby, in terms of Scorpion or indeed updates, is there any way you would like them to go? Is there a particular website or handle you would like them to visit if they're interested in learning more about Scorpion?
Yeah, go to scorpion.co/Clio.
There we go. Harsha, from your perspective, is there anything you would like to add before we wrap up, or anywhere our listeners would like to go or to get any more information that you think might be useful?
Clio.com/Scorpion. Simple.
Keep it simple. Exactly. Thank you both so much. Really enjoyed today's discussion. It's been an absolute blast having you on the Legally Speaking podcast. Wishing you lots of continued success with this partnership and indeed lots of future pursuits. But from all of us on the show, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.